My name is Underwood, and for my senior project, I chose the topic of the ethics of clinical research. There are several reasons why I chose this topic. Going into this year, I knew that I would want to enter a lab-related field after college, but I wasn't sure whether I wanted to do medical research or forensics. In November, I had the opportunity to tour the state forensics department, so I'd had some sort of insight into that field, but not as much into medical research. I focused specifically on clinical research because my mother has a background in it, so I thought it'd be interesting to see how her career has evolved. As well as I took a course through Piedmont, Virginia Community College last semester entitled Biomedical Ethics, and it really sparked my curiosity, so I wanted to figure out some way to incorporate that into my project. For my internship, I interned at Cobb Hall at University of Virginia. I worked with Ms. Deborah Thacker, who runs an infectious disease lab in Cobb Hall. Her lab focuses on the rhinovirus. During the course of my internship, she was running a study from DuPont that observed the effects of probiotics on the rhinovirus. So my internship, one thing that I thought was really interesting was I was able to experience the different stages of the clinical trial. So stage one being screening patients and getting the trial set up. My first day of my internship, Ms. Thacker was screening patients, and so she explained to me the requirements subjects must meet in order to participate in the study, as well as let me read the trial protocol, showed me around the lab, and just kind of explained to me what her job entailed. Stage two was prepping for the trial. So once all the subjects had been locked in, we had to make sure that everything was set up before the trial actually started. On October 10th and 11th, I returned to my internship, and we worked on labeling vials about 5 hours each day, so 10 hours total. As you can see here, each one of these boxes contained around 90 vials, so there was a lot to do, and this was a very simple and repetitive, yet tedious task. But it was very important because this needed to be done and done correctly before the trial started, because there were other things to worry about on the trial day. The next time I returned to my internship, I interviewed my mentor, which I thought was very interesting, but it didn't particularly help me with my research. She also took me to a nurse's station, which is pictured here, well, the sign pointing to the nurse's station are pictured here. And I thought that was very helpful because I got to experience the trial from a different point of view other than just the researcher. I got to see the nurses. And the head nurse explained to me their particular role in the trial, which I thought was interesting. And my final day of my internship was day 0 of the study, which meant it was the day that the patients were inoculated or given the rhinovirus. From 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., they reported to the nurse's station where they were inoculated with the virus, and they gave blood samples, fecal samples, nose and throat swabs, as well as nasal lavages. And nasal lavages are simply just a solution that is pushed through the nasal cavity and collected, and that's one of the samples that is analyzed. A runner would bring the samples from West Complex, which is where the nurse's station was, over to Cobb Hall. It was about a 5-minute walk, so they hired someone to bring the samples over to us. Once the runner arrived, he would drop off the cooler full of samples and take the fecal samples directly to the freezer room, where I would unpack the cooler and sort the samples numerically. Once I sorted the samples, I would put them in the refrigerator to make sure that they were preserved. And then I would go help my mentor with aliquoting the samples. So this was her role during day 0, was she was aliquoting or dividing up the nasal lavages. The lavages typically had around 4 milliliters of fluid in each sample, but it depended from person to person. 2 of the milliliters had to be aliquoted into these red cryogenic cap tubes, and the rest of it, hopefully it was 2 milliliters, if not less, was put into these orange cap tubes, which I would then take from Ms. Thacker and sort numerically, and then ensure that they would be protected with the ice pack. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to return to see the last stage of the trial process, which is just collecting all the samples and sending them back to the company. I had hoped that I would have extra time, but I didn't. But it wasn't the most important thing that I thought I needed to see through this process. For my community service project, I volunteered at the Orange County Free Clinic with Ms. Allison Hodge, who is pictured here. On the days that I assisted Ms. Hodge, who is the Director of Resource Management, I helped her with their upcoming fundraiser, which was a golf tournament. And I helped her by creating donor mailing lists, revising letters to the donors, and running errands. And on days that she wasn't at the clinic, I offered administrative support to the other staff, such as filing, logging patients into the system, opening and logging medicine, sorting expired medicine. I dealt mainly with the medicine aspect of it, which I thought was really interesting. I hadn't planned on that being my job, but I was really glad that it was. And for my legacy, I worked with the Orange County Review, which is their local paper, to publish a piece about my experience in the clinic. And my hope for this is to raise awareness about the clinic, because it's kind of hidden away in Orange County, as well as possibly recruit some volunteers. For my research paper, I asked the question, what are the unethical aspects of clinical research, and how do the benefits outweigh these negative aspects? To start, it's worth mentioning that there are already established 7 elements of research that have to be prevalent in order for it to be ethical. And some of these elements include informed consent, which is arguably the most important. A favorable risk-benefit ratio, meaning that the risks in the trials are always less than the benefits. And a protocol that's reviewed by an institutional review board or an IRB. So in 1996, the pharmaceutical company Pfizer set up clinics in Nigeria during a bacterial meningitis outbreak. They were testing a drug called levofloxacin, and at the end of the epidemic, 11 children had died in their clinics. It was 6 from the existing treatment and 5 from their experimental treatment. And what makes this trial considerably unethical is the fact that they never obtained informed consent from the patient. They didn't even know that the drug they were being given was experimental, as well as their protocol was never reviewed by an ethical committee. So oftentimes, big pharma companies will outsource their research to foreign countries, and while their intentions may seem philanthropic, it's often for much greedier reasons. Because they're further away from the United States, they're further away from the site of the FDA, and they're able to cut corners and conduct unethical research because they're not being watched as closely by the FDA. So my solution for this issue was to ban big pharma companies from outsourcing their research if they've been found in conducting unethical research. This graph right here shows the disparity in the amount of trials conducted by the National Institute of Health versus big pharma companies. Here you can see that from 2006 to 2014, there was a 23% decrease in trials conducted by the National Institute of Health, which is government funded, and there was a 43% increase in trials conducted by big pharma companies, which are private pharmaceutical companies. The NIH typically invests around $32 million to medical research annually, and they receive this funding through competitive grants. So my solution to limiting the amount of big pharma interaction with clinical trials was to set aside room in the United States budget for government-funded trials. And personally, to me, this makes sense that if these trials are required in order to get FDA approval, in order to get government approval, then the government should have some part in conducting these trials. And my third and final solution was to ensure that local clinics are conducting ethical research as well. Typically at major institutions, they're required to have an IRB, an institutional review board, but at local clinics that only conduct research maybe 1 or 2 times a year on human subjects, they don't necessarily have to have an IRB. And this can cause issues, such as in 1996, a small town doctor in Georgia named Dr. Fives was found conducting a series of fraudulent studies. So when a big pharmaceutical company sponsors trials in local clinics, they will pay them a certain amount of money per patient they enroll. And so Dr. Fives was enrolling fake patients into this study and collecting the money that he earned from it. He would even go as far as collecting blood and urine samples from his employees or other patients to return to the lab. And not only did this affect the integrity and safety of his patients and employees, but it also skewed the data that could affect the American public as a whole if this drug were to be released to the public. So going into this project, I knew that I would enjoy my internship, and I knew that I would love my community service based off of prior experiences, but I didn't realize how emotionally attached I would get to my research. So as I stated before, I took a class in the fall about ethics, and I really, really liked it. But I didn't necessarily feel passionate about it at that point, but after writing my research paper and presenting it many times, I've seen how it really affects me personally and how passionate I get about when big pharma companies are being unethical. My advice to the class of 2018 seniors would be to find a topic that you're really interested in. You're going to be devoting an entire year to this project. So if you don't at least like your topic, you're not going to have a very good time with it. Also, this project is meant to be a learning experience, so putting a lot into it is going to be best for you. You're going to get out of this project what you put into it, and at least to me, I think it's worthwhile to work really hard throughout this year and make this a good project. As for next year, I will be attending Virginia Tech. I'll be double majoring in microbiology and criminology. While I really enjoyed working in my medical research lab, I really feel that forensic science is more for me. So after I obtain my bachelor's degree, I would like to go to graduate school and get my master's in forensic science. And then I would like to go and hopefully find a career in DNA evidence analysis, either for the state of Virginia or for the Innocence Project. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
In your research, was there one rule or regulation or series of rules and regulations surrounding the ethics of clinical trials that you felt were most necessary?
I found that a lot of the regulations that I was able to research were more global rather than national. Like there's the Declaration of Helsinki, which incorporates a lot of what makes sense that needs to be ethical in a trial, but it's not necessarily applied directly to the United States. So I don't think there was a set of regulations that I especially thought was like the most important, because none of them really applied as directly to the United States, which I thought was something that really needs to be worked on.
Just, you may not have an answer to this, but I've often wondered, with all the things that go into doing trials on medicines, how is it they get all the way up the chain, then the FDA approves them after years and years, and then when they go out, then they finally have all of these horrible side effects on people. I mean, what do you think after years and years that if all those cases would be worked out?
Yeah, and it's a lot of times.
Is it corruption? Or?
It might be. Obviously, if it's gotten to the point where the FDA has approved the drug, then they haven't seen corruption in the trials. But with big pharma companies, they have so much money that they can buy their way out of it. So I think that when you see a drug get to FDA approval, but it's still showing those side effects, somewhere in the trial process,